On April 28, 1945, as the European theater of World War II entered its final bloody weeks, the United States Army found itself pushing deep into northern Italy, driving relentlessly against a retreating but still dangerous German enemy. And it was here, in the city of Vicenza, where one of the last strongholds of Wehrmacht resistance attempted to hold the line, a place where the fate of retreating enemy units collided with the momentum of a determined Allied advance, and where U.S. soldiers once more shouldered the burden of breaking through fortified defenses, liberating a city, and ensuring that no foothold remained from which the enemy could prolong the war. The battle was not merely another entry in the long and arduous Italian campaign. It was a culmination of years of hard fighting that had begun with the landings at Salerno and Anzio, battles in mountains and valleys, bitterly contested positions along the Gothic line, and relentless pressure against an enemy that used every defensive advantage the rugged terrain could offer. Now, with the end so close, with Germany collapsing under Allied offensives on every front, the Americans still faced deadly opposition, for cornered foes fight desperately, and Vicenza would not be taken without fire, steel, and sacrifice. As dawn broke across the Veneto plains, the U.S. Fifth Army advanced toward Vicenza, a force seasoned by years of combat, their ranks filled with men who had marched through Sicily, fought at Monte Cassino, endured the stalemate at Anzio, and clawed their way through mountain passes where every hill was a fortress. They knew that while Berlin itself was under siege from the Red Army in the east, their own task in Italy remained unfinished. Destroy the last German divisions resisting in northern Italy, secure key transportation hubs, and deny the enemy the ability to regroup or escape into Austria. Vicenza, sitting astride critical roads and rail lines, represented one such hub, and it was clear from reconnaissance reports that the enemy had chosen to make a stand here. German commanders had concentrated troops to hold bridges and intersections, fortified buildings into machine gun nests, and mined the approaches into the city, determined to exact a price for every inch the Americans advanced. For the men of the U.S. Army, the assignment was clear: advance, engage, and seize Vicenza, no matter the resistance. The morning began with a low growl of engines as American Sherman tanks rolled forward, their steel tracks grinding into the cobblestone roads, each vehicle supported by squads of infantry who spread out along hedgerows and ditches, rifles ready, bayonets fixed. Overhead, artillery observers scanned for enemy concentrations, radios crackling as coordinates were relayed to batteries positioned on the outskirts. Within minutes, the opening bombardment began, U.S. artillery thundering across the plains, shells whistling overhead, before crashing into enemy strongpoints, tearing apart defensive trenches, collapsing bunkers, and sending plumes of smoke and dust skyward. The ground shook under the barrage, the city itself echoing with concussive blasts. And yet, as the shelling subsided and American units pressed forward, resistance emerged almost immediately. From concealed positions in farmhouses and buildings on the outskirts, German machine guns opened fire. The staccato bursts of MG-42s cutting through the morning air, bullets whipping across fields and forcing American troops to dive for cover. Mortar rounds landed among advancing squads, shattering the earth, spraying fragments that wounded men and rattled nerves. Still, the Americans pressed forward, their own machine gunners setting up to return fire, tracers lacing across the fields as squads maneuvered under covering fire, flanking enemy positions. Engineers moved under fire to clear mines from the roads, crawling forward with bayonets to probe for hidden charges, the danger immense. But without them the tanks could not advance. Slowly, methodically, the American lines inched closer, overwhelming one position after another with rifle fire, grenades, and sheer determination. Inside Vicenza itself, the fight intensified. Streets became battlegrounds, every intersection contested, every building a fortress. German troops, many of them seasoned veterans from divisions that had retreated through the Apennines, fought with grim determination, knowing their orders were to delay the Americans at all costs. From church towers, snipers fired down at advancing soldiers, forcing squads to clear buildings systematically, room by room, grenade by grenade, while tanks blasted holes through walls to dislodge stubborn defenders. The clash of fire echoed through the narrow streets, smoke hanging heavy in the air, rubble blocking avenues of advance. Medics darted into the chaos, dragging wounded comrades back under fire, their red crosses barely offering protection as shells and bullets rained indiscriminately. American commanders coordinated with precision, directing artillery to strike concentrations of enemy resistance, calling in P-47 Thunderbolts to strafe enemy convoys attempting to flee north, and maintaining constant pressure to prevent the Germans from consolidating. Yet the enemy countered with sudden bursts of resistance, launching ambushes from alleys, firing Panzerfausts at Sherman tanks, and unleashing last-ditch armored counterattacks. In one instance, German armored cars roared out from behind buildings, machine guns blazing, attempting to cut off an advancing infantry platoon. But within seconds the Americans responded, Sherman swiveling their turrets, firing shells that turned the vehicles into burning wrecks, the flames lighting up the street as soldiers pressed forward over smoldering steel. By midday, the Americans had pushed into the heart of Vicenza, but the battle was far from over. German officers, refusing to surrender, rallied small groups of men in isolated pockets, creating deadly firefights that raged block by block. U.S. squads were forced into brutal close-quarters combat, clearing stairwells with grenades, exchanging fire across shattered courtyards, and advancing inch by inch through buildings reduced to rubble. Civilians huddled in basements, listening as the thunder of battle passed above. The liberation of their city paid for in destruction and blood. Throughout the afternoon, the relentless momentum of the U.S. Army began to break the defenders. Prisoners were taken in increasing numbers, their hands raised, weapons cast aside, their expressions weary and hollow, the inevitability of defeat written across their faces. And yet still, some fought to the last, firing until they were silenced by American rifles, machine guns, or tank shells. Engineers cleared more roads, medics worked tirelessly, and officers maintained the drive forward. The city was slowly, inexorably, falling into American hands. As evening approached, the stars and stripes rose over Vicenza, marking the city's liberation. The last organized resistance had been crushed, the German defenders either dead, captured, or in retreat. American soldiers, though exhausted, knew the significance of what they had accomplished. Vicenza was more than another city. It was a vital hub, a symbol of the crumbling German presence in Italy, and one of the last barriers before total collapse. Civilians emerged cautiously from hiding, some embracing their liberators, others staring silently at the devastation. The soldiers, hardened by years of war, accepted their gratitude with humility, aware of the price that had been paid. For the U.S. Army, the victory at Vicenza underscored the endurance of their campaign in Italy. It was a fight that had begun years earlier, one that had seen setbacks, stalemates, and grueling battles, but it had also showcased the adaptability, determination, and resilience of American forces. In Vicenza, all those lessons came together. The coordination of armor, artillery, and infantry, the bravery of individual soldiers under fire, the skill of engineers and medics, and the relentless will to push forward until victory was secured. As night fell, soldiers regrouped, weapons cleaned, wounded evacuated, prisoners processed. The city lay in ruins, scarred by battle, yet liberated, its future now free from the tyranny of occupation. The Americans knew the war was not yet over. North lay more battles, more resistance, and beyond that, the final surrender of a regime that had plunged the world into chaos. But Vicenza stood as one of the last milestones, a testament to the resolve of the United States Army, proof that even in the war's final days, they would fight with the same determination as on the first, until the enemy was utterly defeated. And so, on April 28, 1945, in the smoke and rubble of Vicenza, the U.S. Army once more carved its place into history, liberators through sacrifice, warriors through necessity, men who carried the burden of freedom on their shoulders and pushed forward with unyielding resolve, ensuring that tyranny would find no refuge, not in Italy, not in Europe, not anywhere the American soldier stood.